I'm Isabella, 29 female. I live in a one-bedroom apartment in the city, a place I secured through years of careful saving and diligent work as a financial analyst. My life is organized and predictable, built on the principle that you earn what you get. But for my entire life, that principle was systematically dismantled by my own family, who showered my younger sister with everything while I was expected to fend for myself. A disparity that would ultimately unravel in the most shocking way imaginable. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. Growing up, my world was defined by a quiet, unspoken imbalance. There was my sister, Sophia, and then there was me. Sophia was the sun, I was the satellite caught in her orbit. She was 4 years younger, a whirlwind of artistic talent, bubbly charm, and effortless grace. She could sketch a lifelike portrait with a few strokes of a pencil and charm any adult into giving her an extra cookie. My parents, Eleanor and Arthur, were utterly captivated. They saw her as their masterpiece, a vibrant splash of color in their otherwise muted, practical lives. I, on the other hand, was the sensible one, the responsible one, the one who got good grades, followed the rules, and never caused a fuss. In their eyes, I was reliable like a sturdy appliance. You don't praise a refrigerator for keeping things cold, you just expect it to. That's what I was to them, an expectation fulfilled, quietly and without fanfare. Our family photo albums tell the story better than I ever could. Page after page is filled with Sophia at her dance recitals, Sophia winning art competitions, Sophia beaming on her birthday with a mountain of presents. I'm usually on the periphery, a ghost in a slightly too big hand-me-down, my smile a little strained. My achievements were met with a perfunctory, "That's nice, dear." A perfect report card would get a nod before my mother turned back to helping Sophia with a diorama. When I won a regional math competition in high school, my father patted me on the back and said, "Good job, that'll look good on your college applications." For Sophia, a simple watercolor painting was framed and hung in the living room like a museum piece. This disparity wasn't just emotional, it was deeply financial. From a young age, I was taught the value of $1 because I had to be. My allowance was meager and tied to a long list of chores. If I wanted something, a new book, a trip to the movies with friends, I had to save for weeks. Sophia, however, just had to ask. New art supplies, trendy clothes, the latest phone, they appeared as if by magic. Sophia needs these for her portfolio, my mother would explain. Or, it's important for her to fit in, she's so sensitive. The implication was clear. I was not sensitive, and my needs were not important. I learned to be self-sufficient out of necessity. I got my first job at 16, bussing tables at a local diner. The smell of grease and coffee became the smell of freedom. Every dollar I earned was a step away from the suffocating dynamic of my family. I saved relentlessly, building a small nest egg for college. I knew, without anyone ever having to say it, that there would be no significant financial help for me. My parents made it clear that my education was my responsibility. "You're smart, Isabella," my father would say. "You'll get scholarships, you'll figure it out." It was meant to be a compliment, but it felt like an abdication of their parental duty. And I did figure it out. I worked 2 jobs through college, took out student loans in my own name, and graduated with honors and a mountain of debt. I ate ramen noodles, bought second-hand textbooks, and missed out on the typical college social life. Meanwhile, Sophia was enrolled in a prestigious private arts college a few states away. Her tuition, housing, and living expenses were all covered by my parents. "It's an investment in her future," my mother would say, her voice full of pride. They never called my education an investment, they called it my path. The first few years after college were a grind. I moved to the city for a job as a junior financial analyst, sharing a cramped apartment with 2 roommates and dedicating more than half my income to rent and loan payments. I was meticulous with my budget, tracking every penny. I slowly climbed the ladder at work, earning promotions and raises through sheer grit and long hours. I was proud of what I was building, but a constant, gnawing bitterness lingered just beneath the surface. It would flare up during our weekly family phone calls. My mother would spend 20 minutes gushing about Sophia's latest project or the amazing trip she and her friends took to Europe, a trip my parents had funded, of course. Then she'd turn to me and ask, "So, still work?" Inghard, remember to set some money aside for retirement. The irony was so thick it was suffocating. My relationship with Sophia was polite but distant. We were sisters, but we were not friends. We had nothing in common besides shared DNA. She saw my life as boring and rigid. I saw hers as a fantasy, funded by the favoritism I had always endured. She'd call me occasionally, usually when she needed something. "Izzy, can you look over this freelance contract for me? I don't understand all the money stuff." I'd always help because despite everything, she was still my sister. But each time, it felt like another small piece of me was being chipped away. She had no concept of the struggles I'd faced because she'd never had to face any herself. She lived in a world where things were simply provided. The pattern was set in stone, and as we entered our late 20s, it only became more pronounced. I was the independent, self-made daughter they bragged about to their friends to show they'd raised a capable child. Sophia was the beloved project they continued to pour all their resources into. I was the proof of their good parenting. She was the recipient of it. This was the fundamental, unspoken contract of our family. I was expected to need nothing, and she was entitled to everything. I had accepted it, not with grace, but with a weary resignation. I kept my distance, built my own life, and tried not to let the unfairness consume me. But I had no idea that the foundation of my independence, the very credit and identity I had worked so hard to build, was being used against me in the most profound betrayal imaginable. The quiet imbalance was about to become a deafening explosion, and it would start with the one thing my family valued above all else: Sophia's happiness. The announcement came, as most things in our family did, in a way that centered entirely around Sophia. She was getting married. Her boyfriend of 2 years, Liam, had proposed. He was a junior investment banker, handsome and ambitious, the perfect match for the golden child. My mother, Alina, called me, her voice practically vibrating with excitement. "Isabella, you'll never guess. Sophia and Liam are engaged. Isn't it just the most wonderful news?" I offered my congratulations, a genuine smile on my face for my sister's happiness. For a fleeting moment, I felt a flicker of hope that this new chapter might somehow reset our family's skewed dynamics. Perhaps with Sophia starting her own life with Liam, my parents would finally see me as an equal, not just a self-sustaining satellite. That hope was extinguished within minutes. "We're going to give her the wedding she's always dreamed of," my mother continued, her voice dropping into a conspiratorial whisper. "Your father and I have been saving. We want it to be perfect. A big affair at that lovely vineyard estate just outside the city." I did a quick mental calculation. A wedding at that venue started at $50,000, easily. "Wow, Mom, that's incredibly generous," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "Well, she's our baby girl. She deserves it," Alina chirped. "And of course, we want to help them with a down payment on a house. It's so important for newlyweds to start off on the right foot without financial stress." The line went quiet for a moment. I could hear the unspoken words hanging in the air. Unlike you, I had started my adult life with nothing but debt and the pressure to succeed on my own. The crushing weight of my student loans had dictated every decision I'd made for the past 7 years. And here they were, not just throwing Sophia a lavish wedding, but also handing her a down payment for a house, a goal I was still years away from achieving despite my diligent saving and high-pressure job. The bitterness I'd suppressed for years began to bubble up, hot and acidic. "That's amazing," I managed to say, the words feeling like ash in my mouth. "She and Liam must be thrilled." "Oh, they are. Sophia is already looking at dresses. She wants you to be a bridesmaid, of course." Of course, I was to stand by her side, smiling and supportive, a living testament to the family's generosity, a generosity that had never, not once, been extended to me. The role of bridesmaid felt like a costume for a part I no longer wanted to play, the supportive, uncomplaining sister. But refusing would have caused a family war, so I agreed. The months leading up to the wedding were a masterclass in financial disparity. There were endless discussions about caterers, florists, and photographers, with price tags that made my head spin. My parents didn't flinch. My father, Arthur, who had once lectured me for an hour about the importance of buying a used car to save on depreciation, was now happily signing checks for artisanal cheese displays and a live string quartet. My contribution to this spectacle was to be both emotional and financial. As a bridesmaid, I was expected to co-host a bridal show, and plan the bachelorette party. When the maid of honor suggested a weekend trip to Miami for the bachelorette, I had to gently steer the group toward a more affordable local spa weekend, citing my busy work schedule as an excuse. The truth was, I couldn't afford a plane ticket and 3 nights in a South Beach hotel. The other bridesmaids, friends of Sophia's from her privileged world, shot me looks of mild pity. They didn't understand. How could the sister of the bride, a financial analyst no less, be unable to afford a simple weekend trip? The bridal shower was held at my parents' house. The backyard was transformed into a Pinterest-perfect dream with floral arrangements and a catered lunch. The gifts were extravagant: designer kitchen appliances, expensive linens, and checks with staggering numbers of zeros. My parents presented Sophia and Liam with their gift, a framed certificate announcing a $50,000 contribution to their down payment fund. The room erupted in applause. Sophia cried tears of joy. I felt completely numb, an outsider watching a scene from someone else's life. I had given them a set of high-quality, practical kitchen knives that I'd saved for. When Sophia opened it, she gave me a quick, "Oh, thanks, Izzy," before moving on to the next, more glamorous gift. Later, I overheard my mother talking to one of her friends. "Isabella is so practical," she said with a light laugh. "She gets it from her father's side." It wasn't a compliment. It was a dismissal. The day of the wedding was beautiful and agonizing. Sophia looked radiant in a dress that cost more than my car. The vineyard was stunning, the food was exquisite, and the champagne flowed freely. I played my part perfectly. I fluffed Sophia's train, held her bouquet, and gave a heartfelt toast that I had practiced for weeks to ensure my voice wouldn't crack with resentment. I talked about our childhood, carefully editing out the parts where I felt invisible. I wished her and Liam a lifetime of happiness, and in that moment, I truly meant it. My anger was never really at Sophia. It was at the system that had created her. During the reception, my father pulled me aside. He had a few glasses of champagne in him, and his usual reserve was gone. He put his arm around my shoulder. "You see, Isabella," he said, gesturing around at the opulent celebration. "This is what it's all about. Family, making sure your sister is happy and secure." "It's a beautiful wedding, Dad," I said, my voice tight. "I know you had it tough starting out," he continued, completely misreading my tone. "But it made you strong, independent. We're so proud of you. You never needed our help. Not like Sophia." And there it was, the core of the injustice laid bare. They had penalized me for my competence and rewarded her for her perceived helplessness. My strength wasn't a source of pride for them. It was an excuse to abandon me. They hadn't encouraged my independence, they had enforced it. In their twisted logic, their neglect was a gift that had forged my character. The money they were spending on this one day could have paid off half my student loans, could have been a down payment on my own small condo, could have given me the same stress-free start they were so determined to give my sister. The unfairness was no longer a quiet weight, it was a physical crushing force in my chest. I watched them dance with Sophia, their faces alight with adoration, and I finally understood. I wasn't just the other daughter. I was the ghost at their feast, a necessary, invisible component that made the celebration of their favored child possible. My sacrifice, my struggle, my independence, it was the dark backdrop that made Sophia's star shine so much brighter. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that this was a betrayal I could no longer ignore. Life settled back into its usual rhythm after the wedding. Sophia and Liam went on a lavish honeymoon to Italy, courtesy of another generous check from my parents, and then began house hunting in an upscale suburb. My phone calls with my mother were filled with updates on their search. "They found the most charming colonial," she'd say, but the school district is only a 9 out of 10. I told Sophia not to settle. The casual entitlement in her voice was like a constant, low-grade hum of irritation in my life. I tried to tune it out, focusing on my work and my own financial goals. I had just received a promotion to senior analyst, and I was on track to pay off my student loans in the next 3 years. That was my prize. My independence was my reward. I've always been meticulous about my finances, a habit born from necessity and reinforced by my profession. I subscribed to a credit monitoring service, not because I was worried, but because it was a smart, preventative measure. I usually just glanced at the monthly summary emails, confirmed that everything was in order, and archived them. But one Tuesday afternoon, an email arrived with a subject line that was different from the usual, "Your monthly credit report is ready." This one read, "Alert! A new account has been opened." My heart did a little stutter step. It was probably nothing, I told myself. Sometimes a new credit card I'd opened would trigger the alert a month late, or it could be a system glitch. I clicked the link and logged into my account, a knot of professional curiosity mixed with a tiny thread of unease tightening in my stomach. On my dashboard, under the New Accounts section, was a line item that made no sense. It was a student loan. Specifically, a Parent Plus loan. The lender was the Department of Education, and the balance was a staggering $82,451.37. The date of origination was listed as August 2015. I stared at the screen, my mind refusing to process the information. A Parent Plus loan. That was a federal loan taken out by a parent for their dependent child's education. But I had never had a Plus loan. My father had explicitly refused to co-sign anything for me, let alone take out a loan on my behalf. "You're an adult," he had said at the time. "You need to build your own credit." And the date? August 2015. That was the month I had started my junior year of college. It was also the month Sophia had started her freshman year at the private arts college. A cold dread, heavy and metallic, washed over me. It couldn't be, it was impossible. This had to be a mistake, a clerical error, someone else's information somehow linked to my account. But my name was right there at the top of the page. Isabella. The loan was under the name of the parent, but it was tied to the student's identity for record keeping. Why was it showing up on my credit report? A Plus loan shouldn't even be on the student's report. Unless the parent who took it out listed my information somewhere. But that didn't make sense. My hands trembled as I navigated to the full report details. I clicked to expand the information on the loan. The parent borrower was listed. Arthur, my father. The air left my lungs in a silent whoosh. I felt dizzy, disoriented, as if the solid ground beneath my office chair had suddenly turned to sand. My father had taken out a loan, a massive one, and it was somehow connected to me. The date, August 2015, kept flashing in my mind's eye. Sophia's college. They had told everyone they were paying for her tuition out of their savings. My mother had bragged about it. "We believe in investing in her talent without saddling her with debt," she had announced proudly at a family dinner. It was all a lie. They hadn't paid for it. They had borrowed for it. But the question remained, why was it on my credit report? This was the part that my analytical brain couldn't compute. Plus loans are in the parent's name and are their sole responsibility. They don't affect the student's credit. I frantically searched online, my fingers flying across the keyboard. Parent Plus loan showing on student's credit report. The results were all the same. It shouldn't happen unless there was fraud or a serious error. Then I found it, buried in a financial aid forum. A rare, almost unheard of scenario. A Plus loan could be linked to a different student's social security number through a clerical error during the application process. Or, and this was the part that made my blood run cold, it could happen if the parent fraudulently used the identity of one child to secure a loan for another. Perhaps if they didn't think the other child's student profile was strong enough, or for some other convoluted, nefarious reason. The pieces started to click into place, forming a picture of such profound betrayal that I felt physically ill. My competence. My perfect academic record. my squeaky clean history. Had they used me? Had they leveraged my identity, my good name, the very responsibility they punished me for, to secure a future for my sister that they couldn't actually afford? The alert wasn't for a new account in the sense that it had just been opened. It was new to my report. The monitoring service had likely just updated its algorithm or performed a deeper data sweep that had finally uncovered this fraudulent link after years of it lying dormant. The loan had been sitting there, a ticking time bomb tied to my name, for almost a decade. I thought back to my father's words at the wedding. It made you strong, independent, you never needed our help. It wasn't pride in his voice, it was justification. It was the sound of a man rationalizing a deep and unforgivable betrayal. They hadn't just neglected me, they had actively used me. They had mortgaged my identity to fund my sister's dream, all while preaching to me about the virtues of self-sufficiency. I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated rage. It was so intense it made me shake. Every sacrifice I had ever made, every extra shift I had worked, every social event I had missed to study or save money it all felt like a mockery. I had been playing by the rules in a game they had rigged from the start. I saved a PDF of the credit report page, my movements stiff and robotic. I logged out, closed my laptop, and stared blindly at the city skyline outside my office window. The world felt different now. The foundations of my life, my family, my identity, the very narrative of who I was had been shattered by a single email. This wasn't just about favoritism anymore. This wasn't about a wedding or a down payment. This was fraud. It was a crime, and they had committed it against their own daughter. The ghost at the feast was about to start haunting them for real. The initial shock gave way to a cold, razor-sharp focus. As a financial analyst, my entire career was built on sifting through data, finding discrepancies, and following the money. Now, I was about to apply those skills to the wreckage of my own family. The anger was still there, a simmering cauldron in my gut, but I channeled it into a methodical, almost detached investigation. Emotion was a liability. I needed facts. My first step was to confirm the unthinkable. I needed the original master promissory note, MPN, for that Parent Plus loan. This was the legally binding document my father would have signed. Getting it wouldn't be easy. I couldn't just call the Department of Education and ask for it. The loan was in his name. Privacy laws would prevent them from talking to me. But I had an advantage. I knew the system. I started by creating a pretext. The next morning, I called my father. I kept my voice light and casual, a feat of acting that deserved an award. "Hey, Dad, quick weird question for you," I began. "I'm updating some of my financial records, and I need to list my past addresses for a security check. Do you remember the exact dates we lived at the old house before you moved?" It was a plausible lie. He gave me the dates without a second thought. During the conversation, I slipped in the key question. "By the way, I was trying to access some of my old college financial aid records online, and it's asking for a FAFSA PIN from back then. Do you happen to remember what you used for that stuff, or which email address you used for all my applications?" "Oh gosh, Isabella," he chuckled. "That was ages ago. Your mother handled all of that. I think she used that old family email address we had, the one we never check anymore. Why don't you ask her?" "Good idea," I said. "Thanks, Dad." I hung up, my heart pounding. He had given me exactly what I needed. A confirmation that my mother, Eleanor, was the architect of their financial paperwork. I knew the password to that old, forgotten family email account. They had never bothered to change it. With a deep breath, I logged in. It was like opening a digital time capsule. Most of it was junk mail and old newsletters. But a quick search for FAFSA, student loan, and Department of Education from the 2015-2016 academic year yielded a goldmine. There they were, emails confirming the creation of a FAFSA account, emails confirming the completion of the Parent Plus loan application, and attached to one of them was a scanned copy of a document. I clicked it open. It was the MPN. I scrolled down the document, my eyes scanning the boxes. Borrower, Arthur. Student, Sophia. The loan amount matched what was on my credit report. It was all there. But then I saw it, the piece of the puzzle that explained everything. In the section for the student's information, next to Sophia's name and date of birth, was a different social security number. It was mine. My mother had meticulously filled out the application. She had used Sophia's name but my social security number. It was a deliberate, calculated act of fraud. It was subtle enough to pass through the initial electronic checks. A human might have flagged the mismatch, but an automated system in 2015 likely wouldn't have. She had gambled on the inefficiency of bureaucracy, and for nearly a decade, she had won. Why would she do it? The answer was as cynical as it was simple: to get the loan approved. Perhaps my father's credit wasn't as pristine as they let on. Or maybe, and this seemed more likely, they knew that Sophia, with her spotty part-time work history and focus on arts, might not have met certain eligibility criteria on her own, whereas I was a model student with a proven track record. By using my SSN, they had essentially piggybacked on my reliability, my good name, to secure the funds. They had used my identity as collateral. My investigation didn't stop there. If they had lied about this, they had lied about other things. The email account gave me access to old bank statement notifications. I couldn't see the statements themselves, but I could see the sender and subject lines. I cross-referenced the dates of the loan disbursements with notifications from their bank. Large deposits from the Department of Education were followed by large withdrawals or transfers, likely to the bursar's office at Sophia's college. But I also found something else. Email exchanges between my mother and a financial advisor from around the same time. She was asking about the best way to gift money to a child for a down payment without incurring gift taxes. This was years before Sophia even met Liam. They had been planning to fund her entire adult life from the very beginning. The final piece fell into place when I searched for my own name in the email account. I found my old college acceptance letters, and attached to one of them was a scholarship offer I had never seen before. It was a modest but significant grant from the university, a merit-based scholarship for $5,000 per year. I had never received it. There was an email from the financial aid office asking my mother to confirm my acceptance of the grant. The reply, sent from her, read, "Thank you for the generous offer, but we will have to decline. Our family situation has changed, and we will be covering Isabella's costs through other means." I felt the blood drain from my face. They hadn't just failed to help me, they had actively sabotaged me. They had turned down free money meant for my education. Why? The only reason I could fathom was that accepting it would have required them to disclose more of their financial information, which might have exposed what they were doing with Sophia's loans. Or maybe, in their twisted view, they thought that scholarship money should go to someone who really needed it. Because I, their responsible daughter, would figure it out. They had stolen my identity to fund my sister's education, and stolen my scholarship money, forcing me deeper into debt, all to maintain their facade as perfect, doting parents to their golden child. I spent the rest of the day gathering my evidence. I printed every email, every document, every confirmation. I downloaded the PDFs from my credit report. I created a timeline of events, from the loan application in 2015 to the wedding and the house down payment. Each piece of paper was a testament to their deceit. The paper trail wasn't just about lies, it was a map of my life, showing every point where they had diverted my path for their own selfish purposes. By the time I left my office that night, the city lights blurred through the tears of rage and sorrow in my eyes. The investigation was over. I had all the proof I needed. The detached analyst was gone, replaced by a daughter who had just discovered her entire life was built on a foundation of lies. Now came the next, harder part. The plan. I wasn't just going to confront them. I was going to make them pay. For 2 days, I did nothing. I let the full weight of the betrayal wash over me, allowing the rage, the grief, and the profound sense of loss to run their course. I needed to feel it all before I could think clearly. My instinct was to scream, to call them and unleash a torrent of accusations. But I knew that a purely emotional confrontation would achieve nothing. They would deny, deflect, and gaslight me. My mother would cry, my father would get angry, and they would somehow twist the narrative until I was the ungrateful daughter causing trouble. They had been manipulating me my whole life. They were experts at it. To beat them, I had to be smarter. I had to be colder. I had to use the very skills they had forced me to develop: my financial acumen, my meticulous planning, and my emotional independence. This wouldn't be a messy family argument. It would be a transaction. I would calculate the cost of their deceit and present them with an invoice. My plan had 3 phases: assessment, leverage, and execution. Phase 1, assessment. I went back to the evidence I had gathered and began to quantify the damages. This wasn't just about the fraudulent loan, it was about the entire economic impact of their actions on my life. I created a detailed spreadsheet, my fingers clicking with cold precision. First, the loan itself, $82,451.37. This was the principal. I noted that since it was a Parent Plus loan, my father was legally on the hook for it, but the fraudulent use of my Social Security number made it my problem. It was a ticking time bomb on my credit report. If he defaulted, it could destroy my financial standing. Second, the stolen scholarship, $5,000 per year for the 2 years they had it, totaling $10,000. But I didn't stop there. I calculated the opportunity cost. That $10,000 was money I wouldn't have had to borrow. I looked up the interest rates on my own student loans from that period and calculated the compounded interest I had paid on an equivalent amount of debt over the years. The total came to approximately $14,800. Third, the intangible damages. This was harder to quantify, but I had to try. I thought about the years of financial stress, the double shifts, the missed opportunities. I thought about the down payment for Sophia's house, a gift valued at $50,000, while I had no lega. Elle claimed to that money. It was the most potent symbol of their inequity. It represented the stress-free start they had given her and denied me. I laid it all out in clear, undeniable terms. The fraudulent loan needed to be dealt with immediately. The scholarship money, with interest, was a debt they owed me. The $50,000 down payment was my moral leverage. Phase 2, leverage. I couldn't just walk in and demand money. I needed leverage that they couldn't ignore. My primary weapon was the fraud itself. The unauthorized use of a Social Security number to obtain a federal loan is a federal crime. It carries hefty fines and even potential prison time. I spent an evening consulting with a lawyer. I didn't tell him the full story or that it involved my parents. I presented it as a hypothetical client case. I asked about the legal ramifications of identity theft in the context of federal student aid. He confirmed my research. The consequences were severe. He explained that filing a police report and an identity theft affidavit with the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, would be the first steps. This would trigger an investigation by the Department of Education's Office of the Inspector General. This was my trump card. The threat of legal action, of public shame, of a federal investigation, that was something my image-conscious parents could not withstand. My mother, the former bank teller who valued appearances, and my father, the respectable civil engineer, would be terrified of that kind of exposure. It would destroy the perfect family portrait they had so carefully curated. My secondary leverage was Sophia. She and Liam were in the process of closing on their new house. A family scandal, especially one involving financial fraud, could put their mortgage application at risk. Liam, the ambitious junior investment banker, would not be pleased to have his new in-laws investigated for federal crimes. I didn't want to hurt Sophia directly, but I knew that pressure applied to her perfect life would be pressure applied to my parents. Phase 3, execution. The confrontation had to be on my terms, in a neutral location where I controlled the environment. I booked a small, private meeting room at a downtown hotel for the following Saturday. I then sent a simple, non-negotiable text to my parents and Sophia. We need to have an urgent family meeting. Saturday at 2 p.m. I've booked a room at the downtown Marriott. I will send you the details. It is extremely important that you are all there. Liam should come too. The curt, professional tone of the message immediately set them on edge. My mother called me twice, her messages filled with anxious questions. I didn't answer. I let them stew in uncertainty for 4 days. I prepared a folder for each of them. Inside each folder was a copy of the credit report showing the loan, a copy of the master promissory note with my SSN next to Sophia's name, a printout of the email where my mother declined my scholarship, and a summary page I had typed up. The summary page was titled Terms of Resolution. It had 3 points. Immediate loan resolution. You will contact the Department of Education with me present. You will confess to the clerical error and take all necessary steps to have my Social Security number permanently removed from this loan. You will provide proof that this has been completed within 30 days. Financial restitution. You will pay me a sum of $64,800. This is comprised of $14,800 for the declined scholarship with compounded interest and $50,000, representing the financial assistance and equitable start in life that was denied to me. This will be paid via wire transfer within 15 business days. Agreement of non-contact. Upon fulfillment of the above terms, we will have no further contact. I will not pursue legal action. If the terms are not met, I will immediately file a report with the FTC and the police for identity theft and federal loan fraud. It was bold, it was audacious, and it was exactly what I deserved. This wasn't about revenge in the sense of making them suffer. It was about justice. It was about reclaiming what was stolen from me, not just the money, but my peace of mind and my future. I was severing the toxic ties and settling the accounts once and for all. The calculated cost of my freedom was $64,800 and the permanent loss of my family. As I printed the documents, I felt a strange sense of calm. The price was high, but I was more than ready to pay it. I arrived at the hotel meeting room 15 minutes early. It was a sterile, impersonal space with a long mahogany table and 6 chairs. It was perfect. There were no family photos on the walls, no memories to soften the blow. This was a business meeting, the closing of a painful, lifelong account. I set up my laptop and placed 4 folders neatly on the table, one at each of their future seats. I sat at the head of the table, my posture straight, my hands resting calmly on the surface. Art was hammering against my ribs, but on the outside, I was the picture of composure. They arrived together, a united front of anxiety. My father, Arthur, looked stern and confused. My mother, Eleanor, was visibly nervous, twisting the strap of her purse. Sophia and Liam walked in behind them, Sophia looking worried and Liam wearing a mask of polite indifference, clearly annoyed at having his Saturday interrupted. "Isabella, what is this all about?" my father began, his voice booming slightly in the quiet room. "You're scaring your mother." "Please, sit down," I said, my voice even and cool. I gestured to the chairs. They hesitated for a moment, then complied, shuffling awkwardly into their seats. The sight of the folders in front of them only deepened their unease. I let the silence hang in the air for a full minute, allowing their anxiety to build. Then I began. "Thank you all for coming," I started, as if I were leading a quarterly review at work. "I've called this meeting to discuss a serious financial and legal matter that involves everyone in this room. I suggest you open the folders in front of you." My father huffed, but he opened his. Liam, ever the banker, opened his immediately, his eyes scanning the documents with professional curiosity. Eleanor and Sophia followed suit, their movements hesitant. I watched their faces as they processed the information. My father's face went from confusion to a deep, ruddy red of anger. Liam's eyebrows shot up, his expression shifting to one of genuine shock and dawning horror. Sophia just looked bewildered, turning the pages back and forth as if she couldn't comprehend what they meant. But my mother's face crumpled. She didn't even need to read the documents. She knew exactly what they were. Her skin turned a sickly pale, and she stared at me, her eyes wide with terror. She was the architect, and she knew she had just been found out. "What is the meaning of this?" my father demanded, slapping the promissory note down on the table. "This is a private family matter." It stopped being a private matter the moment you fraudulently used my social security number to secure a federal loan, I replied calmly, my eyes locked on his. A loan for $82,451.37, which, for the past 9 years, has been linked to my identity. It stopped being a private matter when you, I shifted my gaze to my mother, declined a scholarship in my name, forcing me to take on more debt. Eleanor flinched as if I had struck her. Isabella, we did what we had to do for your sister, she stammered, tears welling in her eyes. Her school was so expensive, we wanted to give her the best. And what about me? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. What did you want to give me? You gave me lectures on responsibility while committing a federal crime in my name. You praised my independence while actively sabotaging my financial well-being. Sophia finally spoke, her voice small. Izzy, I don't understand. What loan? Mom and Dad paid for my college. The look of pure, dawning betrayal on Sophia's face was almost painful to watch. She turned to our parents. You told me you saved for it. You told me it was a gift. We were protecting you, my father boomed, trying to regain control. We didn't want you to have the burden of debt. So you gave the burden to me instead? I countered, my voice rising for the first time. Only I didn't even know I was carrying it. You used me. You used my good record, my identity, as a tool to get what you wanted for her. Liam, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. His voice was clipped and icy. He looked at Eleanor and Arthur, not with anger, but with contempt. Is this true? You used a fraudulent social security number to obtain a federal loan? As a man who worked in finance, he understood the gravity of the situation perfectly. Do you have any idea the kind of trouble you are in? The kind of trouble you've put all of us in? He shot a look at Sophia. Their mortgage application was almost certainly in jeopardy if this came out. That was my opening. I pushed the final document, the terms of resolution, across the table. This is how we're going to solve this problem, I said. These are my terms, they are not negotiable. My father read the paper, his face turning an even darker shade of purple. $64,800. Are you insane? This is extortion. No, I said, standing up to my full height. This is restitution. It is the price of your deceit. You have 2 options. You can meet my terms and this matter disappears forever. We go our separate ways and I never speak of it again. Or you can refuse. And if you refuse, I will walk out of this room, drive to the nearest police station and file a report for identity theft. I will contact the FTC. I will notify the Department of Education's Inspector General. The choice is yours. But I suggest you consider the consequences very carefully. Not just for you, but for Sophia and Liam's voodoo. Ray as well. The room was silent, save for my mother's quiet sobs. Sophia was staring at her hands, tears rolling down her cheeks. She was finally seeing the ugly truth behind her perfect, gilded life. My father looked from me to my mother, then to Liam, whose cold, appraising stare was more damning than any outburst. The threat of public humiliation, of legal action, of his golden child's future being tarnished, it was all there in Liam's eyes. Arthur's shoulders slumped. The fight went out of him, replaced by a weary, bitter acceptance. He had been outmaneuvered. He looked at me, and for the first time, I think he saw me not as his daughter, but as a formidable opponent he could not defeat. Fine, he ground out, the word tasting like poison. We'll do it. I nodded once, my face unreadable. You have my email address. I will expect confirmation from your bank within 15 business days. We will arrange a conference call with the loan servicer next week to begin the process of removing my SSN. Don't contact me for any other reason. Without another word, I picked up my laptop bag, turned my back on the wreckage of my family, and walked out of the room. I didn't look back. The day the truth came due, I had collected the debt. It cost me my family, but it had bought me my freedom. The 2 weeks that followed the confrontation were the quietest of my life. I blocked my parents' and Sophia's numbers, not out of spite, but for self-preservation. I needed silence to process the severing of a lifelong bond. There was no triumphant feeling, no surge of victorious glee. Instead, there was a profound and hollow sense of peace. The kind you feel after a raging storm has passed, leaving devastation in its wake, but also clear, quiet skies. True to my father's word, the process began. I received a clipped email from him with the contact information for a lawyer they had hired. Everything would now go through him. It was a cowardly move, but I preferred it. It removed the emotion and reduced our interactions to what they now were, a legal transaction. The three-way call with the Department of Education's loan servicer was excruciating. My father, coached by his lawyer, had to explain that a significant clerical error was made on the original application, and that the wrong Social Security number had been used for his daughter, Sophia. He had to verbally confirm both my SSN and Sophia's to correct the record. Hearing him read my number aloud, the same number he had stolen, and then pass it off as a simple mistake, made my stomach clench. But I remained silent, letting the lawyers do the talking. The representative on the line, likely accustomed to strange situations, processed the information with bureaucratic detachment. It would take several weeks, but the process to delink my identity from the loan was officially in motion. 10 business days after the meeting, I checked my bank account online. My breath caught in my throat. There it was, a wire transfer for exactly $64,800. Seeing the number in my account didn't feel like a windfall. It felt like a refund. It was the closing balance on a fraudulent account they had opened in my name the day I was born. It was the monetary value of their neglect and my struggle. I immediately transferred the bulk of it to my own student loan provider, wiping out my remaining balance in one fell swoop. The "Congratulations, your loan is paid in full" email that arrived moments later brought tears to my eyes. They weren't tears of joy or sadness, but of release. A weight I had carried for nearly a decade, a burden I had thought was mine alone to bear, was finally gone. The remaining money I put into a high-yield savings account, the beginnings of my own down payment fund. My stress-free start, bought and paid for. A month later, I received a thick envelope from my parents' lawyer. Inside was a certified letter from the Department of Education confirming that my Social Security number had been removed from all records associated with Arthur's Parent Plus loan. There was also a single, typed page. It was a short, formal letter signed by both my parents. It wasn't an apology. It was a statement. It said they acknowledged their actions had caused a permanent rift in the family, and that they would respect my wish for no further contact. I read it, folded it neatly, and placed it in the folder with all the other evidence. It was the final receipt. The fallout on their side trickled back to me through the grapevine. A cousin told me that Sophia and Liam's closing on the house had been delayed for 2 months due to unforeseen financial complications with her parents. They eventually got the house, but the ordeal had clearly strained things. I heard that Sophia was now paying her parents rent to help them cover the monthly payments on the massive loan that was now, finally and fully, their responsibility. The golden child was golden no longer. She was just another person with bills to pay. I received one final communication, an email from an address I didn't recognize. It was from Sophia. It was long and rambling, full of confusion, hurt, and a dawning, horrified understanding. She didn't apologize for her role because she was still grappling with the fact that she had won. But she did say one thing that stuck with me. "I always wondered why you were so distant. I thought you didn't like me. Now I realize you were the only one who saw the truth. I'm sorry for what my life cost you." I never replied. Her apology, like her understanding, had come too late. My path was my own now, unburdened by her shadow. My life is different now. The constant, low-grade hum of resentment that was the background music to my existence is gone. The quiet in my apartment feels like peace, not loneliness. I am thriving at work, and I'm looking at condos in a neighborhood I love. I am building a life that is entirely my own, on a foundation of my own making. I lost my family, it's true. I will never have a mother to call for advice or a father to walk me down the aisle. I'll never have a sister to share memories with. There is a grief in that, a phantom limb that aches from time to time. But what I gained was more valuable. I gained myself. I reclaimed my name, my future, and my own story. They may have written the first 29 years, but I am the author of every chapter that comes next. And my story will be one of integrity, strength, and a peace that no amount of money can buy.